order to spend the money on a full revaluation, assuming that we had a full revaluation, you would need to sell or hedge the gold. Now, I'm echoing what Stephen Moran said and a little bit of a loophole that he's working with here. So here we go. Here's what I would prefer, which I think is actually doable. We revalue the gold, 3,300. We take the proceeds with or without selling the gold. It's political suicide to sell the gold. However, we can do other things like hedge it, like lock in price without selling it. Now, this is going to get a little bit wonky, but this is one of the things they can do. All right. We literally buy bonds of other countries whose currencies we wish to strengthen versus the US dollar. Now, you're going to have to just assume that you're going to have to take this as an assumption that's true. If you take dollars and you buy other currencies or other countries' bonds, you are retiring US debt. I have strong opinions on it, and before giving an opinion, I think it would be helpful to set everyone right on this, at least from my point of view. Revaluing gold is very realistic. If things do not turn around soon for the debt situation, it might become a necessity. Now, I want to spend time on that, but I want to address the things that you said first. First of all, will we revalue it to $10,000? No, that's idiotic. We wouldn't do that, right? Number one, just to go down the list, right? Will we revalue it to its current price? Possible. I don't think likely. Will we revalue it significantly higher? I think so. I don't know how much higher, but I think higher. Look, historically, and we did it in 71 and 73, gold being revalued is a one-off, right? I mean, they raised the price, just the mechanics of it. They raise the price on the books that we carry it, and then the government borrows that much less, or they spend that much more. Essentially, you're tapping a piggy bank. It does not serve us well on its own. It's like, giving an irresponsible child more money without telling them to stop spending money on video games or something like that. So as a one-off, it's irresponsible. We irresponsibly did it before. When we took it from like 35 to 42.20, we spent the money, and it happened right before the oil embargo. So it just was a disaster. And
many commentators speculate about gold soaring to $10,000 an ounce overnight. While such figures make headlines, they ignore the practical realities. A revaluation would not be a random number plucked from thin air, but a calculated move tied to debt and monetary needs. More plausible is a substantial but measured adjustment, perhaps in the $3,000 range. Such a shift could strengthen America's financial position without destabilizing markets overnight. The real objective would not be speculation or instant wealth, but leveraging gold as a national balance sheet tool, giving the government breathing room in its ongoing debt battle.
It was used irresponsibly. Now, there's some important details of this, and there's some important other things floating around that hopefully I'll be able to tie together. But I want to start by looking at the debt situation with regards directly to gold. All right, the way it could materially help the U.S. Now, I'm echoing something that's already out there, the Mar-a-Lago Accord, whatever, Stephen Moran talked about it. But I want to try and set it straight for people. The way it can materially help us, and do so without being irresponsible, would be to revalue it and, pursuant to the Constitution, use the proceeds to literally retire the debt. Now, I'm not the first person to say this. Grant's Interest Rate Observer had a nice article on it. A couple other professors talked about it. The Constitution has an amendment, and the amendment is that you can't sell gold. Our gold cannot be sold unless it's directly used to retire the debt. So it's a way to tie it to the deficit, and it's actually pretty wise.
Revaluing gold isn't about creating riches, it's about reducing debt. The U.S. Constitution actually allows gold proceeds to be used specifically for debt retirement. This means if gold were revalued, the government could mark up its reserves, effectively unlocking hidden wealth. That wealth could then be applied to lowering the national debt, either directly or gradually through a fund that buys treasuries. This approach resembles a gold-based quantitative easing, infusing the system with value backed by tangible reserves instead of simply printing money. Done carefully, it could restore confidence, calm markets, and provide a disciplined path out of fiscal chaos.
But there are several ways to do what I just described. But what I described is to retire the debt or to lessen our debt, to use the price of gold to lessen our debt. So the first one would be we raise the price of gold. Let's just say we raise it to 3,300, right? I don't think we will, but let's say we do 3,300. And then we can just basically change the accounting ledger to have more money and take that money and do what with it? Well, if you were to go out and buy the debt tomorrow, bonds would explode and we'd be paying a high price for them. It would be bad. You can take that. So that would be stupid tactically, right? But it would be the right idea, right? A smarter idea would be, and other people have talked about this, would be setting up, was it Andrew Jackson, a postal fund, or was it Hamilton? I forget who it was. Set up a postal fund, the guy with the tall hair. And that postal fund would be, you put the money in the fund and then you trickle it out buying treasuries from time to time. So those two examples, the aggressive one and the patient one, those amount to a QE. It's a gold quantitative easing. You're going to put money into the market by retiring our debt. It's fabulous. Now, it's not easy to do. And here's why. It's not popular. Okay? And in order to spend the money on a full revaluation, assuming that we had a full revaluation, you would need to sell or hedge the gold. Now, I'm echoing what Stephen Moran said and a little bit of a loophole that he's working with here. So here we go. Here's what I would prefer, which I think is actually doable. We revalue the gold, 3,300. We take the proceeds with or without selling the gold. It's political suicide to sell the gold. However, we can do other things like hedge it, like lock in price without selling it. Now, this is going to get a little bit wonky, but this is one of the things they can do. All right. We literally buy bonds of other countries whose currencies we wish to strengthen versus the US dollar. Now, you're going to have to just assume that you're going to have to take this as an assumption that's true. If you take dollars and you buy other currencies or other countries' bonds, you are retiring US debt.
Politically, outright selling U.S. gold reserves would be a non-starter. It would be seen as surrendering national security. Instead, hedging strategies offer a solution. By locking in higher values through forward contracts, the U.S. could leverage gold without actually parting with it. These funds could then be used to strategically retire debt or strengthen trade partnerships. Imagine Washington using hedged gold proceeds to buy foreign bonds, subtly shifting exchange rates and boosting U.S. exports. This would mimic the currency interventions of the Plaza Accord in the 1980s, but with gold as the underlying driver, a modern twist on old tactics.
Of course, you're buying someone else's debt, but you're retiring U.S. debt, okay? So that is a way to not necessarily honor the letter of the law, meaning we have to retire debt with it, but honor the spirit of the law, because it's just a fact. If you take U.S. dollars and you buy someone else's bonds with it, you're retiring U.S. debt. Yes, you're swapping U.S. debt for some other country's debt, but you're doing it with a trade partner who is going to be buying your stuff. So there's a loop. You're creating a loop there, and that's my in my naive way, that's my preferred way of doing it. Now, there's precedent for this. We have something in the United States called the Exchange Stabilization Fund, affectionately known as the Plunge Protection Team. Now, what the Plunge Protection Team does is, using various financial means, they will stabilize markets where they need to. And one of the ways you can stabilize the market is, oh, the gold price is too high, then we're going to sell it, or we're going to hedge it, and we're going to take the dollars. It basically comes down to the dollar. If the dollar's too strong, we get dollars and we buy someone else's currency. Kind of like when there's a crisis in Europe and they need dollars, we will swap dollars for their currency. Where do you get the dollars? Well, you get the dollars in the Exchange Stabilization Fund from their fund. And it's not a lot. It's only tactical, and it can only be done for short periods of time to avert a crisis. This, what I just suggested, which is a variation of Stephen Moran's version, is a full-blown implementation of this tactic into a full-blown strategy.
Gold isn't the only asset under discussion. Washington has a history of monetizing resources when fiscal pressures rise. Government-backed entities like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac could be restructured and refloated to raise capital. Even infrastructure and land sales have been floated as options. But gold remains unique. It is universally recognized, deeply liquid, and politically symbolic. Using gold to reduce debt may prove less controversial than raising taxes or slashing entitlements. In a world where debt monetization often looks like financial alchemy, gold offers a rare bridge between tradition and innovation, anchoring the monetary system in something tangible.
All right, so we've got tons and tons and tons of gold, allegedly, right? We hedge it by selling it forward. We don't sell it, but we hedge it. And then we take the funds and we go out and we buy. Who are we negotiating with? Who do we want to buy our goods? Japan. We want Japan to buy our cars? Well, we need to make the dollar weaker, right? So we will then take our dollars and buy yen with it. It makes the dollar weaker versus the yen. It makes them more likely to sell us to sell more cars to them because our dollar is cheaper. And it closes the it's kind of like a Plaza 2 Accord. One deal at a time, one bilateral deal at a time. And I think this is something. So that's the whole mechanism of it. I mean, I didn't want to go down a rabbit hole too much, but I think there's a lot of misinformation. Is such a common word, such a nonsense word, but there's a lot of error out there in understanding this. Everyone's in love with Stephen Moran with his Mar-a-Lago Accord, right? That's what they were talking about a couple months ago. And although it was officially put on the side, he actually said this in a public statement, they're starting to do it. They're starting to do things in it. And I'm seeing that. And the bilateral deals that he's negotiating. Now, what the Moran idea is, what I said, only literally selling the gold. And he even says it's politically unexpedient, it's politically a third rail, something like that, he says. And so he wants to take the gold and sell it and take the proceeds and buy other people's currency, retiring our debt in doing that. We're buying someone else's debt. I don't think that'll happen, but I do think down the road you're going to start seeing us start to hedge our debt.
Whether through Stephen Moran's Mar-a-Lago Accord ideas, hedging strategies, or new bilateral currency deals, the direction is clear. Gold will play a role in addressing America's fiscal storm. Rising interest costs, political polarization, and global trade imbalances are forcing the U.S. to consider bold measures. Revaluing gold would strengthen reserves, weaken the dollar for trade competitiveness, and provide allies with currency stability. The timeline remains uncertain, but the trend is undeniable. Gold will move from the shadows of vaults back to the center of monetary debate, reminding the world that in times of crisis, real value never disappears.
But in doing all this, we lower the debt, we weaken the dollar for trade, and would be supportive of allies who want their currency stronger to begin with. So here's the real reason I believe it will have to happen. Not tomorrow, probably not this year, but it'll happen. Number one, just zooming all the way out to the political environment. We need to monetize our assets. If you own land, you need to sell it. If you own gold, you need to get money for it. You need to monetize our assets. And there's a lot of assets we can monetize. Freddie Mac's going to go public again. Fannie Mae's going to go public again. These are assets being monetized, right? One way or another. We're either going to sell it, loan it, or go public with it, something like that. So that's the first thing. And the culture, and Scott Bessent had said that. He said, we're going to monetize assets. And then that's when everyone started saying, oh, they're going to revalue gold, right? And then the Bitcoin people were saying, revalue gold, take the proceeds and buy Bitcoin. No. Revalue gold, take the proceeds and buy debt, retired debt. You could buy Bitcoin too if you want. But anyway, you could see how once you start fighting over what we buy, it becomes a disaster and it becomes a partisan problem. All right, so that's the first level, right? That we're going to monetize assets, and gold is one of the most obvious assets. Now, Tom Luongo, who we're friends and we're mutuals, he had focused on the housing, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, and he's correct about that. There's other things that we could do too. You could offer people home equity loans, HELOCs, right, tied to treasuries. And in doing that, you tell them, we'll give you a loan against your treasury, against your home equity if you put it in stock. So we're just kind of extending and pretending a Ponzi, but those are things we could do. But I'm sorry, I digress. The real reason what I'm describing will have to happen, whether it's Stephen's way, whether it's my way, whether it's Grant's way, or whether it's anyone else's way,